just wanted to say thanks to everybody for coming. This is a new thing for us in 2025. In 2024, we did live streams a couple of times a month, but typically when we did it, we were streaming on Twitch, and we would go live over there, and then we would simultaneously stream to, I believe it was LinkedIn Live and YouTube as well. And then everything was put on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/chocolatey software afterwards. In 2025, we wanted to switch it up a little bit. So we decided to go with Zoom webinars. So monthly now, we're going to do one of these every month on a topic. And we're hopeful that we get a little bit more engagement. That this is a little bit better format for everybody um, to engage with us while we're doing the stream, and just come hang out and learn about chocolatey stuff month after month. This first stream today, we are going to be taking a look at creating chocolatey packages. We'll walk through some documentation. We'll walk through some various aspects and helpful things related to chocolatey packaging. We're going to create a chocolatey package live here on the stream, and we are going to create a rather non-traditional chocolatey package. Non-traditional in the fact that it's not your typical installer, right? That's what chocolatey packages are really known for. But a chocolatey package can be much more than just installing a piece of software, and we thought this would be a good opportunity to not only touch on that aspect, but to actually show you the power of chocolatey as well in your organization. So to get started, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. And if you've got questions or anything like that, there is a Q&A section down in the bottom of the Zoom webinar window, kind of down there with the chat and raise hand buttons and all that stuff. If you guys want to ask questions as we go, uh, put them in that Q&A section there, and then I'm joined by Chris White here on my team, as well as James Ruskin and Ryan Richter, all three members of the customer success team here at Chocolatey. And they're on hand to answer those questions in the Q&A section, but they may kick those over to answer live on the webinar as well. So as we go through things, if you've got questions, feel free to use that Q&A section um, as we go. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here, and hopefully everybody can see that pretty good. And I'm going to just move a couple of things out of my way so that I have a good clear picture of my screen. And what we should be looking at right off the bat is the package creation guides that we put together. This was Christmas 2023 that we put this stuff together. And I wanted to highlight this on the documentation. So if you go to docs.chocolatey.org and you scroll down the left-hand navigation window and you go to the guides section, here, let me just blow this out. If you go to the guides section, and then under guides, there's this package creation section, and that's this landing page here with all these tiles. There are a lot of different package types that we've documented here, and these are very much walkthrough style guides, and everything kind of kicks you all the way back to the beginning here with how to prepare a package creation environment. This really walks you through the process of getting started with all the tools that you're going to need to create a chocolatey package. We recommend that you use an editor like Visual Studio Code or something like that to author your chocolatey packages, because they have really good linters and stuff like that. And just make that authoring experience a lot nicer for you as you're getting started. We also have a Chocolatey VS Code extension that we'll perhaps touch on as we go through this, or maybe we'll do a whole webinar on that in the future. But to get started, um, I just wanted to highlight this package creation documentation. We're going to send you a follow-up email after we're done here, that's going to have all these links. So if you're worried about remembering where these links are and all that stuff, don't worry about that. You'll get a follow-up email after the webinar ends. It'll include all these links so that you can kind of browse them at your leisure. So let's go ahead and just dive in and get started, right? So what we're going to do today is take a look at again, packaging a non-traditional application using Chocolatey, just to kind of highlight all the different things that you can do. And I thought it would be fun, since we don't have one currently, or at least one that I could find. We don't actually have a self-hosted runner for GitHub or GitHub Actions available on the Chocolatey community repository. There are uh, various agents and runners for other CI systems, but I didn't see one for GitHub Actions. And I've used local self-hosted GitHub runners for Chocolatey stuff in the past, and I thought, well, that would be a fun one. It's pretty easy to package, and it kind of shows everything off. So that's what we're going to do today. So the first thing that I'm going to do, and the first thing that anybody should do when they are getting started with creating a Chocolatey package, is to go ahead and open a PowerShell session. Now, Chocolatey really wants you to run it in an admin context because there's a lot of lockdown folder permissions with a standard Chocolatey installation. So you have to run elevated to be able to read and write to all the directories that Chocolatey wants you to read and write to by default. There are ways around that, and different avenues that you can take to get around that, but since we're just getting started here, we're going to do everything the defaults. Launch PowerShell as an admin, and then I've gone ahead and created a webinar directory at the root of my C drive here. You can do this in your documents folder. You can do it on your desktop. You can do it really wherever. But I'm going to work out of this C webinar folder. And to really get started creating a Chocolatey packages, or creating a Chocolatey package, we're going to use that Choco new command. So this is the command that will run, that will scaffold out all of the pieces and parts that you need to create that Chocolatey package. Now for this package, uh, we need to give it an ID. What do we want to call this package, right? So I think what I'm going to call this is just GHA for GitHub Action dash runner, for lack of a better word. It's pretty self-explanatory what that is to me in my head. And as we dive a little bit deeper into this, we will see how we can make this more discoverable and more helpful for others in our organization that may be consuming this package after we've built it. So I'm not going to do anything else. There's no other command line arguments or anything like that that I need to pass. I'm just going to go ahead and press enter here. And this is going to scaffold out this GHA runner package for me. And you can kind of see that we generated a lot of stuff by default. A lot of this stuff you probably don't need, but it's all really, really good information to have. And it's really, really useful, particularly when you're getting started. So now that we have this package scaffolded, what I'm going to do, since I have Visual Studio Code installed, to open the uh, folder in Visual Studio Code, what I'm going to do is just use II space period, and that stands for invoke item, and then period is the current working directory. And all that's going to do is open this folder up in File Explorer. And now I'm going to right click on this GHA runner folder, and I'm going to say open with code. And then it's going to drop us into our nice VS Code window. I'll make it full screen, and I'll go ahead and close out of all the default stuff here. And I will also make it a little bit bigger so that we can see what's going on. And I think for the sake of the live stream, I will, oops, not open that button. Let me see. Learn how to type. Why? Why are you doing that? Oh shit! There we go. Theme. There we go. Preferences, color theme. I'm going to make this um, a lighter theme, so it's a little bit easier to see. Um, Now, these are all the files and folders that the Chaka command um, generated for you automatically. So when you run Chaka by default, you're going to get all of this stuff. What does all of this stuff mean? The to-do.txt file is just instructions. Read through this file. It'll tell you what you're going to do in terms of filling out the package contents. Are you going to include the binaries? Are you not going to include the binaries? Like, it helps you to define the shape of your package, right? Since we are going to walk through this together today, I'm not going to use this file. I don't need it. So I'm going to just go ahead and remove it. And the same thing with this markdown file. Um, the markdown file is really meant for if you are going to be publishing this package to the Chocolatey community repository, you're going to be required to have the package source, the tools folder, the install scripts, the new spec file, all of this stuff needs to be published to a public repository somewhere so that somebody can read the source code for the package when they browse to this particular package on the Chocolatey community repository. That's a requirement when you're doing that. If you're hosting the package internally on your own network in your own repository, you don't need this stuff. It's good. It's good to have that, right? And do that whole DevOpsy approach to software, especially when you're using Chocolatey. But it's not particularly required. So again, not super required here today. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it just so it's out of our way. Um, Now we get into the real meat and potatoes of a Chocolatey package. This is where the rubber meets the road. This new spec file is all of the metadata about a Chocolatey package. This is where you define things like your title, your author, your version number, description, summary. You define any dependencies that a package might have. All of that information is filled out inside of this new spec file, and it's very heavily code commented. Again, everything about Choco New by default uh, gives you a ton of information. Some will argue that it's too much information, but we would rather give you too much information than not have enough, right? So if we just read down through here, let's just pick out the stuff that we are absolutely going to need today to make this package work. That's going to be our ID, which has already been filled out for us because of the Chaco new command. We said Chaco new GHA-runner. So that got filled in automatically. We didn't provide a version number on the command line when we were building our package initially, though we could have. So what I'm going to do, just for the sake of demonstration today, I am going to give this actually, you know what? We'll probably change this later, but for now, just so we have a version number in here, I'm going to say it's version 1.0. If you are creating a Chocolatey package that installs a piece of software, it's really, really, really highly recommended that you make the version of the Chocolatey package the same version as the piece of software being installed, right? So if, for example, if you're installing Google Chrome version 137.3.4, whatever it is, it'll change in 6 hours anyways. whatever that version is, that should be the version of the chocolatey package. For now, we're going to make it 1.0 until we get to the part of actually getting the GitHub Action Runner and all that stuff, and then we'll come back in here and we'll fix it up. The next little section here, we don't really need for our purposes today. This is all stuff for the Chocolatey community repository, that package source URL and the owners. Again, if you were going to publish this to the Chocolatey community repository, the owners would basically be your GitHub username if you were storing the package on GitHub or whatever your username is on the Chocolatey community repository. That's what you would want it to be. And then the package source URL is whatever source control system you are using to store that package, be it GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, GitButler, whatever. There's a ton of different options out there now, Azure DevOps, et cetera, et cetera. So we're not going to change anything there. The title, this is going to be the title of the chocolatey package, not the ID of the chocolatey package. So there's a difference, and we can look at what that looks like a little bit later. But for this, what I'm actually going to do is change this to be a GitHub Action self-hosted Windows runner. And yeah, it's fine. We'll say that. And then I'm going to say install, meaning this actually installs a self-hosted GitHub runner, just as a way to be descriptive about what this package is going to do. Authors, this is actually who created the software. So in this case, this is GitHub making this. You know, if it was Firefox, it would be Mozilla. If it was Chrome, it would be Google, et cetera, et cetera. The authors is whoever the software vendor is. And again, things like project URL, icon URLs, copyrights, all this other stuff that's commented. Um, if you're doing this for your organization and hosting it internally, it's not needed, not needed at all. So it can be removed. So we'll go ahead and do that. The next section that we're going to take a look at is the tags. This is for discoverability. So on the Chocolatey community repository, you can search by tag. Inside of Chocolatey GUI, which is an application that gives you a graphical way to install packages on your workstations, either in your organization or at home. You can search by tags there as well. For this particular application, since this is a GitHub Action self-hosted runner, um, we might use tags like DevOps or CI or continuous integration or development. You know, all these tags that are relevant to what the thing is, that makes discoverability easier, particularly if you are packaging a whole bunch of stuff that's similar, right? Like you might want to have a tag that's called DevOps, and then all of your packages like VS Code, any VS Code extensions, any CI runners like this one, all of that stuff will show up in those search results, right? So that's what the tags are for. And then the summary and description are pretty self-explanatory. So the summary is like a one-liner. Installs uh, GitHub Action Runner on, let's say, endpoint, right? And then let's fix that closing tag. And then just for the sake of being quick, I'm going to make the summary the exact same thing, or the description the exact same thing. The description you can have markdown in here. So if you're doing things like um, more advanced installation methods, package parameters, that kind of thing, you can make this self-documenting inside of that description field with that markdown, and that renders really, really nicely in things like Chocolatey GUI, for example. We won't touch the rest of this. This is all the section for defining your dependencies. There's a bunch of stuff in here about different ways that you can define version ranges and stuff like that, and a link to the documentation for new spec files as well, because we follow the same syntax basically as a regular NuGet package. Um, and then at the very, very bottom, I like to call this file section out as well, because this is important. By default, anything that is inside of the tools folder ships as part of the Chocolatey package. So when you pack the Chocolatey package and you create that nupkeg file, um, everything that's inside of the tools folder comes along for the ride. It becomes a part of that package. As you're designing your chocolatey packages, um, you might not want to put different files and folders and stuff like that inside the tools folder. You could, because that means you don't have to nest, or you don't have to mess with anything down here. Um, but you absolutely could add additional files and folders to your package, and include them as part of the package when you pack it. You just have to make sure that you fill out this file section appropriately. We're not going to do anything fancy or weird today. We may in a future webinar where we go into some more advanced packaging techniques, but for today, we're just getting started. We're not going to mess around too much um, with this new spec file. We've got enough to be dangerous, and this is good enough for our purposes today. So I'm going to go ahead and save this and close it, and then we are going to look at the tools directory and see what's inside of here. Now there are a couple files again. We're not going to use them. The license and the verification, those are for if you are embedding an installer inside of the package and then publishing it to the Chocolatey community repository. So this gives somebody, particularly moderators, a way to verify or instructions for verifying the installer, like to prove that it is the correct installer, and also for the end user to be able to verify that installer themselves independently. And then the license.txt is a license text for that installer. That's required. If you're going to embed an installer inside of a package, that license.txt file has to be present, that has it clearly defined that you are allowed to embed that installer, that those redistribution rights exist. Um, Again, not important in an organizational context, very important when you are packaging something up for the broader Chocolatey community, and you want it to go on our Chocolatey community repository. So for our purposes today, going to get rid of that license.txt and that verification.txt. And um, also for our purposes today, we are probably not going to get around to using this Chocolatey uninstall.ps1. Um, well, actually, we'll keep this because we're doing a non-traditional installer. With a with Chocolatey, typically when you install a piece of software, Chocolatey will automatically know how to uninstall that piece of software for you. So if you install Firefox via Chocolatey in a package, you don't have to have an uninstall script. When you Choco uninstall Firefox, it just magically knows what to do. Um, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on behind the scenes that makes that work, that we won't get into. Um, but just know that if you are installing a piece of software as part of a Chocolatey package, a lot of the time, and I mean greater than 80% of the time, you're not going to need to worry about an uninstall script. Um, the rule of thumb with an uninstall script is if you've done an action in an install script, meaning you've written a file to disk or changed a registry key or set a firewall rule or installed a service or any number of things along those lines, the uninstall script would include the inverse of that action. So if you've set a firewall rule, you've unset the firewall rule. Or if you've set the registry key, you've unset the registry key. So that when somebody comes in behind you and uninstalls a Chocolatey package, the system gets put back into the state that it was in, as close to as possible, the state that it was in prior to that Chocolatey package ever being installed. That's kind of the goal. Now, again, with a Chocolatey package that installs an application, um, 80% of the cases, that's the only thing you're doing. Chocolatey will handle the uninstall of the software for you. You don't have to have this script. But it is a good idea um, to have one if you are doing operations inside of your Chocolatey package that you may need to um, back out. So with that, we'll skip over this for now because we're probably going to come back to this as part of our action. Um, we'll talk about the Morphify script after we get through the install. And just to walk through this install script again, these are all self-documented, filled out automatically by the default template with a lot of information. By default, we expect you to be installing a piece of software, and we expect that you are going to provide a URL to download a piece of software. Um, Now, there are different ways that you can do Chocolatey packages. That's kind of the most common way. If you were packaging an application for the Chocolatey community repository, you would provide those download URLs, and then Chocolatey would go out and download that installer at runtime and then install the application. It would run that installer after it's got it. In an organizational context, um, you don't want that reliance on the internet. You don't want that package to reach out every single time. So in those cases, that's where you would um, pre-download the installer for that application and bundle it into the tools folder and then change your packaging accordingly. Now, um, since we're not going to be doing a traditional package, I'm going to go ahead and completely empty out this install script, and then we're going to start creating our own package to install this GitHub action. Now we are going to put our error action preference back, and we are going to default that to stop. That way, if any error happens during the execution of our Chocolatey package, the package fails. We don't want, a particular step to not work and then the package keep going because it might not be exactly what we want. Um, you can do what you want here. We highly recommend that you don't do anything other than error action stop, though. You really want that package to fail if any part of it doesn't work. But again, as you're designing your own packages, writing your own packages, you know your risks and your tolerances and things like that. So you can do whatever you want. And even if you don't use it, it's a good idea to define that tools directory as well. Um, and I'll show you what the tools directory actually is on disk once I get done defining it here. Um, but by default, what we do is we're going to say split path parent, and then it's just the parent directory of the Chocolatey install.ps1, this script that's currently running. So we're going to say my invocation dot my command dot uh, definition. And just to show you what that looks like on disk, if we were to come out here and go to, and we won't get super into the nitty gritty with it, but by default, when you run Choco install to install an application, Chocolatey downloads the Chocolatey package, that nupkeg file or that nupkg file, and extracts it into the program data chocolatey lib directory, and then whatever folder that package ID is, right? So, for example, if we were installing git.install, that nupkeg would be extracted into this git.install folder. And if we were to look inside of here, here's that tools directory, right? That package has that tools directory. This is the tools dir. So that is what this refers to uh, in my uninstall script. Now, even if you're not going to use it today, you might use it in a later version of the package in the future. And it doesn't hurt to have it undefined. You're not going to like get a performance hit or anything like that. Um, so these are the two things I highly recommend that you have in every single package version that you create. And another thing that I like to recommend folks do is to add support for package parameters right out of the gate, even if you're not going to use them. So, what that looks like, uh, typically for me, is a variable called package parameters, and then we'll use a helper function called get package parameters, and that's all we need. So that get package parameters function will take any of the package parameters that you pass on the command line to a Chocolatey package as you're installing it and turn it into a hash table, a bunch of key value pairs, right? Whatever's on the left side of the equal sign of the package parameter becomes a key. Whatever's on the right side of the equal sign becomes the value for that key in that hash table. Unless it's a switch, slash enable or install service or something like that. In those cases, um, it, the value becomes true or false. Either you've got it or you don't. So that's kind of how that works. Again, much like the tools directory, even if you're not going to support it today, the next version of the package might have a use case for package parameters. You don't have to change it later. You've already it got that initial support added. So we've got everything we kind of need defined already, and I'm just going to get rid of this white space here to start creating our package for a GitHub Action runner. So I'm going to go out to my web browser, and I've already um, pulled up the documentation for adding self-hosted runners. Again, we're going to give you this information via email after the webinar. But basically, what you do is you go to your repository, you click on actions, and then it gives you everything you need. So what we're going to do here is go to um, this repository, and I've got this repository set to private. Oops, just for security purposes. So when you're running a self-hosted runner and you've got a public repository, if somebody forks your repository and then provides a PR to that public repository and your actions run on that self-hosted runner, any code that's part of that PR will run on your self-hosted runner. So there is a slight security concern with self-hosting runners in a public GitHub repository, and to avoid any of that stuff, I'm using a private repository. So I highly recommend you do the same thing if you're going to use self-hosted runners with your GitHub workloads as well. But just to cover your butt, make it a private repo, and you're all good. So to get the actual installer and things for this runner, we're going to click on settings. We're going to go to the actions section, and then we'll click on runners, and then we're going to click this green new self-hosted runner button, and then we'll click. It's going to be a Windows runner, and then it's actually going to give us pretty much all of the code that we're going to need to make this work. So what I'm going to do is just take all of this for the download. And I'm going to put it over here, and we're going to just so that we have it, right? We've got all this information nice and handy. And then we're only going to use a couple of pieces of information, and we're going to go back to our documentation to help us get started with this. Now, we could absolutely just take this code and run it inside of the Chocolatey package, and it'd be fine. Totally fine. A Chocolatey package can be any PowerShell you want, and that's great. But we have a whole lot of helper functions that we've written that make working with things inside of Chocolatey packages a lot safer and a lot easier. And one of those things is downloading and extracting zip files. Which, if you notice the code for installing a self-hosted action, that's all it is. It's a zip file that you extract, and then once you've extracted it, you run some code. So what we're going to do is go out to our PowerShell reference, and then I'm going to say install this chocolatey zip package function here. And if we take a look at this, we've got all the same kind of information that's required for installing this action runner from the zip file is part of the parameters for this function. So what I'm going to do is just look at a couple of these examples, and we really only need a couple pieces. We don't need absolutely everything that's included on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to uh, copy. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to. Yeah, I will. I will copy this one. So just to fill this out, now we can start um, to change this stuff from our example, right? So there is for the package name, there is an environment variable that we can use called chocolatey package name, and that'll always be the package ID of the package being installed. And then we need the URL, which we have right here. And let me write that in quotes real quick. And then we also need to tell it where do we want to extract that zip file from once it's been downloaded. And if we go back to the documentation, it recommends that we put it kind of at the root of the C drive. So this very first section here, it says make dir action runner, CD action runner. So that's what we're going to do as part of this as well. So just to get rid of this, we'll say unzip location. We are going to say actions, and I'm going to call it runner, right? Now, we can also add some additional parameters to this since we are downloading from the internet. It's probably a good idea that we check some and just verify that that runner is the correct one. So what I'm going to do is bring that checksum over and that checksum type as well. So what we'll say here is checksum, and that checksum was this value here. It's kind of nice that they give this all to us. And then we will also need, again, if we check that documentation, we will need that checksum type. Now, you'll notice that there's checksum and checksum 64. You can have a 32-bit and a 64-bit version of an installer or a zip file or something like that, um, and have code inside of your package that detects which one to use. So you can have both. Oops, I copied that here. So we will do that. All right.
Hey, Steven,
Yeah.
in the unzip location,
Mhm.
that should be actions dash runner, not underscore, correct?
It doesn't matter.
Oh, it doesn't?
The folder name doesn't really matter. I mean, they call it a dash runner up here, but you can call it whatever you want. So technically, yes, if we were going to follow um, this verbatim, yes,
Mhm.
we should probably make it that. But um, it doesn't really make a difference. You can call that folder, you know, Bob's super cool folder, and that'll just be where it's running from. That's fine. Um, Now you'll notice that we've got a whole bunch of stuff on different lines and things here. So I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. And what you'll see a lot of times is um, a hash table instead. So we'll do that. Uh, so what we'll say is a hash table, and then we'll just move all this stuff into that hash table. Now, should have done this from the beginning, but you know, it is what it is. So let's do this. We'll cut that out of there, put that there. We'll grab our checksum and put it right there. And then we will grab, actually, we won't do that. We'll just do checksum. Can't type. Checksum type equals SHA-256. And then we will clean this all up, make it look nice and pretty. And right there. It's right there. Beautiful. All right. Oh, should put the unzip location back in there. So zip location. This just makes it look a little bit cleaner, right? So what we'll do is actions, and then we will put it like that. And then what we will do is we will pass our zipargs hash table to this function. So now it's a lot cleaner, and we can kind of take a look and see we're doing the exact same thing as the documentation for the action runner, but we're just doing it in a more quote unquote chocolatey fashion, right? So we're going to download this zip file. Um, it's going to verify that the checksum is correct. And Chocolatey will handle that for us, so we don't have to manually do anything. Which you'll notice here is something you would have to manually do yourself if you are manually installing us. Um, and then it extracts the zip file. So our Chocolatey helper function kind of takes all of the steps and just puts it into one single helper function. Now, the one thing that we want to do that isn't being done as part of the instructions from GitHub is we're not ensuring that this folder has been created. So what I'm going to do um, is first get rid of the stuff from GitHub because we're done with it for now. And this is where uh, the power of a Chocolatey package really starts to become apparent. So I don't know right now if the folder that we're going to install this action runner into actually exists, but I can make sure it does by saying, if not, let's say test path C actions runner. So if that folder doesn't exist, let's go ahead and create it. So we'll just say, we'll say write, say warning. Does not exist. Creating, and then we can say null equals new item C actions runner, and then it is a directory, and then we're done. That way, when we get down to here, we've guaranteed that that folder exists. Now, another aspect of installing this runner is actually configuring it to run as a service, which is important. And they give us all of the code that we need to use to do that as well. So I'm just going to add a quick code comment here to download and unzip runner executable to C actions runner, and then another code comment. After we're done, we will configure the runner. And I'm going to paste in what we're going to use here. And we're going to use another helper function from Chocolatey to help us do this work. So if we go back to our master list of functions here, we can look at start Chocolatey process as admin. Now what this has is pretty much what statements you want to run against the executable. So we have a um, couple of different things that you can use here. So, for example, if you wanted to run a bat file, this is how you would do that. If you wanted to run uh, any kind of executable, there's all kinds of examples on how to do that. So, for our purposes here, what we are going to run is this config.cmd, and then our statements are going to be this URL and this token. So if we were to take a look at this again, we can say start Chocolatey process as admin, and then our exe to run. We're going to change this up ever so slightly. And we are going to make this that C actions runner folder. And we'll wrap this in quotes. And then our statements is just going to be the rest of this. And then we can delete this. So that's all there's to it. So we've got our Chocolatey package created. So what we're doing, just to recap, we want this Chocolatey action runner, or this GitHub action runner, to install itself to the C actions runner folder on the system here. But we need to ensure that that folder actually exists before we extract it there. So that's what this little bit of code here does. So ensure the C actions runner folder exists. And then we define all the parameters that we are going to pass to our helper function, that install Chocolatey zip package function. And we've pulled this information from the documentation for the GitHub Action Runner right off the GitHub website. So we've got that zip file, we've got the checksum, uh, we've defined where it's going to get extracted to, and then we pass all those parameters to our helper function. Once the uh, zip file has been extracted to that folder, we need to actually configure the runner to run as a service all the time. So that's what this CMD command does here. So it points to the repository that the runner is going to be associated with, and then GitHub has automatically generated this token for us. This would be a really, really good use case for package parameters, where you could provide a new token every time you install an action runner somewhere. You might want a runner to be to a specific repository, or you might want to refresh the token or whatever. That would be a good use case for that. And importantly, I said we would go back to it, and now we will. We've got the actual version number of the action runner right here. So this is actually going to be 2.322.0. So if we just real quickly go back to our version, I'll just fix this up real quick. We'll call that good. Now, we're going to be short on time, so I am going to forego the uninstall of the action runner. For this, what I would typically do, since the install of the action runner, I know that it installs the GitHub Action Runner service, my uninstall would just remove that service. That would be the only line of code that I would really need inside of there. I may also, once I've unregistered the service, delete that C Actions runner folder as well, just to get rid of any remnants of the action runner being there. You may or may not want to do that though, if there are like build artifacts and stuff like that still in that folder that you need to keep after the runner has been uninstalled. Um, and just to real quickly touch on it, the before modify script, these are used um, during Choco upgrade. So if you are upgrading a piece of software from one version to another version using Chocolatey, you would put any instructions that need to be done prior to the upgrade. Maybe you need to back up a file or change something, or whatever that may be. You would put that code inside of here, and then when Chocolatey performs the upgrade, the before modify script of the currently installed version of the Chocolatey package runs. So that means if you are packaging 7-zip version 1 and you've got a before modify script as part of that that backs up a file, when you Choco upgrade 7-zip to version 2, the before modify script from version 1 actually executes. That way, if something is different between version 2 and version 3, the upgrade instructions for going from version 2 to version 3 can be different in version two's before modify script. So they kind of track with the currently installed version. That gets a little bit confusing for some folks, but just know that the before modify script will run during upgrade from the currently installed version of the package, and it will also run during uninstall of the currently installed version of the package as well. And the notes that are in the file by default kind of explain that as well. But again, we don't need this particular file in this case either. We're actually at a point now where we could pack and attempt to install this package. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Chocolatey VS Code extension here just to show it. And I'm going to select the pack option. So, and to get to that extension, I opened up the command palette, which on Windows is Control Shift P. And then I just started typing Chocolatey, and it brought up all the different commands that are available. I am going to say pack a Chocolatey package, and it's going to look at the currently open workspace for any new spec files. It's going to find that GH runner new spec file. I'm not going to need any additional command line arguments. I'm just going to hit enter, and then it's going to go through, it's going to do its thing, and then all of a sudden we have that runner chocolatey package created. Now we can test that this works, and hopefully it works. Hopefully I haven't forgot anything or missed a step. I know this it worked previously, so unless the demo god is not uh, in my favor, um, we should be good. So I'm going to go ahead. I don't have a repository currently on this system, so I'm going to change directories, and let me just real quickly blow the font up a little bit so everybody can see a little clearer. And just to show you what's in this folder, we've got our finished chocolatey package here. And to test installing a package, you can install from any folder. So what I'm going to say is choco install gha runner -y to suppress any confirmation prompts. And I'm going to very explicitly say my source is going to be the current folder. So I'm going to use a period here. So when this runs, it's going to create. Now it didn't have that folder, and then it's going to, what is it doing? That's being very strange. So we've got that GitHub Actions runner. Here it all is. Here's that config script. I have a feeling that it is tripping up over. That's what I did wrong. This should have been part of the statements, and I should have done a call to CMD to call the batch script. This is going to sit here and hang. I don't have time to fix it though. Do we have any questions from the chat that we need to answer live? I have not paid a single bit of attention to the questions. Apologies. Uh,
Hey, Stephen,
Nobody has been interrupted.
we do have one
Sure.
question. Somebody wanted to know where you got the token at Start Chocolate Process as admin.
Yep.
Um,
So that is something that GitHub gives you automatically when you go to add a self-hosted runner. Um, so when we go to settings and we go to actions and we go to runners and we say new self-hosted runner, it's going to generate this token for you automatically here. Now there is a REST API that you can query to generate tokens and then use those tokens when you're setting things up. Um, I couldn't get the API endpoint to give me a token. I was holding something wrong when I was attempting it prior to setting this up. Um, but I have a feeling it's 100% on me. I was not using the correct permutation of a URL or something. It was giving me a 404. But there does exist an API that allows you to uh, get tokens. They only last an hour, so you have to be quick when you're setting this stuff up. But GitHub does it for you automatically when you're setting up self-hosted runner. on a repository, that's where I got that token.
All right. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Um, we are coming up to time here, so I want to say thanks to everybody for hanging out with us for a little while. I hope you found it useful. Um, I hope it was interesting to see that a chocolatey package can really be anything you want. This stuff is just PowerShell under the hood. So anything that you can do it with PowerShell, you can do inside of a chocolatey package. Um, our next webcast is going to be on April the 17th at the same time, 12 Eastern, 5 p.m. UTC. We are going to be looking at how you can leverage PS App Deploy Toolkit inside of a chocolatey package. PS App Deploy Toolkit is something we don't hear about it super often, but our customers that are migrating from using a more traditional SCCM approach to using a chocolatey approach don't want to completely reinvent the wheel, and they don't have to. PSADT is super popular in the Intune and SCCM space, and we're going to take a look at how you can wrap those PSADT packages that you're already using inside of Chocolatey, so it's not as much of a lift and shift to change workloads from going to Chocolatey from something like SCCM, or using Chocolatey inside of SCCM. Um, as well. So looking forward to that one again, April 17th at 12 Eastern. We'll have some more information on chocolate.org/events once we have it all put together. Um, you'll get an email. If you've registered for this webinar, you're automatically signed up to receive notifications about future events and webinars. So keep an eye on your inbox for that sort of stuff. We do have uh, a poll that I would like to um, hopefully launch um, for at the end of this. So, um, obviously, Chocolatey, we have a business version. Um, you can do a lot of stuff with chocolatey packages with the business version a lot easier. We've got a lot of right click create a chocolatey package functionality where you don't have to write a script at all. We do everything for you. And there's a bunch of different features. So if you're at all interested in learning anything about that, let us know, and we'll reach out to you. We're not going to reach out to you otherwise. Tell us you want it, and we'll let you. We'll get a hold of you. Otherwise, we're not going to bother you at all. What else? I feel like there was something else that I needed to say. Oh, after the webinar ends, you will be getting a survey. The survey is going to be super helpful for me as I'm putting these things together. It's super simple. It's a question. What do you want us to cover on future webinars? Please help me plan future webinars. Let us know what you want to see. um, there's a ton of stuff that we can talk about with Chocolatey. Um, some stuff that we didn't even get to today, like automating these things so that you never have to update a package again. Just set it and forget it. That sort of stuff. That can be a whole webinar. So please, once the webinar ends and you get that survey, please fill it out. It's super helpful for to us. So with that, I don't have anything left. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank the guys hanging out with me here on stream. They were answering questions, so I didn't have to too much. Um, I do happen to see. I just saw a question disappear about the webinar being recorded. The webinar is on demand. We are going to look at putting it on our YouTube channel afterwards. Yes, this is my first go around of doing this. So I've got to figure that stuff out. And once I have that figured out, we'll make sure that we Um, get it up there for you. I see one more question that I'll answer before we cut it off here. And that question is, as a managed service provider, how can I leverage Choco to offer efficient IT support to my clients? Um, so we have quite a few customers that are MSPs, managed service providers, and what they will typically do is they will package up their a particular client's applications as chocolatey packages and provide a repository to that client specific to that client, that when they install chocolatey on that client, um, they configure it with that client specific repository. That client can only see their software. And then they use our Chocolatey GUI application to give their end users um, a friendly way to install those applications. Um, so with Chocolatey GUI, I don't have it installed on this particular box, but basically every package that exists on your repository shows up in Chocolatey GUI, and you can click a button and click install. So if you've got, web browsers, VS Code, all the various third party stuff, end users, without needing admin rights, with the business version, can click in there and kind of self service themselves. So um, it saves a lot of people a lot of time. Um, it really reduces security footprints for those MSP type clients because they don't need admin rights to install their software in it anymore. And then MSPs like it because they get less tickets for, hey, I need Firefox or I need Chrome. They just provide it, and the client can kind of self service themselves. So, um, we've got a lot of customers again that are MSPs. They find a lot of value in it. But again, let us know if you want to talk about it. We're more than happy to talk about it with you, um, and we'll start that conversation and give you trial, see if you like it, and go from there. You're not beholden to anything for sure. Um, the recording should go out. Uh, yes. I'm not sure when I'm going to get the recording. It's recording due to cloud. Um, but yes, we will make sure that you have the information on how to watch that back. So um, we are slightly over time, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Again, I want to say thank you to everybody for joining us and hanging out. Again, we'll be back on the 17th of April, just after the PowerShell Global Summit in Seattle, which is the 7th through the 10th. If you're coming to the summit, a bunch of us from Chocolatey are going to be there. We'd love to say hi. So if you're going to be there, make sure to find us. And then after summit, we'll have another one of these um, webinars, and it should be a good time. So again, thanks everybody for joining, and we will see you at the next one. Take care.